stunning. Now, lots of us grew up either reading about or watching this chap and his friends. Thomas the Tank Engine is celebrating a special birthday today. It's 80 years since the first book was published by the Reverend Wilbert Awdry, a rector in Cambridgeshire, and it's nearly 40 years since the children's programme Thomas and Friends was first broadcast. The man who created many of those famous TV faces lives in Suffolk, and Debbie Tubby has been to meet him.
Thomas the Tank Engine loves having buffers and a boiler that bubbles.
Thomas the Tank Engine is a very familiar face, but not many people realise he has so many of them.
Thomas had up to like 60 different expressions because he was obviously a main character, but they've all got to be different. And I'd be looking at a mirror and I'd be going, oh, I've got to do a joyful thing. So, and I'd be sitting there doing all that sort of thing and copying myself. You know, it's a troublesome truck. I think a lot of my colleagues on the show said, looks remarkably like you, Sean, you know, and they did.
He was senior sculptor for 6 series and 3 feature films, designing the faces and figurines of 16 characters.
He's got some eyes here that you put on, like so, and then he used to have a mechanism behind him that he brings them to life, and you can turn it like that, and he would like just do different expressions, and you can say, and the eyes are what really bring it to life. And this one here is a little train here. This one's called Neville. And he was just like a nice little gentle character who appeared in just 1 episode, I believe. So
obviously his face didn't fit.
Obviously.
Cinders and ashes.
The first book was published 80 years ago by Reverend Awdry, who wrote many of them while a rector in Cambridgeshire and then a vicar in Norfolk when his son was ill.
My father made up 3 stories then to keep me amused. Followed it with a little wooden tank engine made of bits and pieces the following Christmas. I played with it and then asked him for stories about it, to which he said, well, yeah, okay, I can do the stories, but it needs to have a name. Why don't we call it Thomas the Tank Engine? And so I suppose that was the point, probably, when Thomas the Tank Engine was born.
Thomas was excited.
And if you said to me, could you make 80 years of stories about steam trains and adventures? You'd think, well, you'd struggle, but you know the writers are quite an extraordinary bunch, and they did come up with some great little scripts and plots for the trains.
He's gone from making iconic symbols of childhood entertainment, blockbuster films including Lord of the Rings and Skyfall, to impressive statues.
At the time, I had 3 young children, and they thought Daddy was a hero because I'd say, "Oh, I'm off to work with Thomas again." And they go, "Oh, my dad knows Thomas the Tank Engine." And it was lovely. You know, it was just one of those, just at the right time, at the right place. It was just fabulous.
He's now become a leading sculptor in his field after shaping one of the best-known faces on television. Debbie Tubby, BBC Look East, Suffolk.